My name is Peter Pomerantsev. I'm a writer. I'm a senior fellow at the London School of Economics and at the University of Johns Hopkins. Welcome to my exp. I always get confused when I try to look for a word that kind of describes the scale of the issue that we're talking about. I suppose you could just reduce this to a question about election rules or media. Often this is just talked about as a media problem. That's not the right way to look at it. The internet is not a media space or even an information space, which is a word I've been using. It's just society. It's everything. It's where our schooling is and our relationships are. It's not an information space issue that can be thought about purely, in one government department, the often usually ignored department of, in Britain, culture, media and sport, which is cruelly seen as the least important ministry. This is not just an issue for one ministry. This is not just the culture, media and sport problematic, while the economy and healthcare and everything else ignores it. This is everything. Something is broken down in the way we represent ourselves, the way we imagine ourselves, the metaphors we have. Parties in parliaments don't mean anything anymore. What the hell is a conservative these days? What the hell is a liberal? None of these words mean anything. The parties themselves have become these weird jellyfish transforming, leaving people behind, often just talking among themselves. Of course, and that's the gap that populists then come in and grab people. But also on TV, people look at TV and don't see themselves. Or they just sort of disappear down little niches into little Facebook groups where they feel they're represented. So that's the greater crisis. And of course, information flows through that. Information is that thing through which our society manages a metaphor for itself, through which it can then make various decisions. The great danger is that if this keeps on breaking down further, the only way then to unite societies, the most obvious answer becomes authoritarianism. We need a strong leader to sort out this mess. We can't make decisions. We've broken down. We've hit a dead end. We can't talk to each other anymore. The strong man must come. And that's an option that I think will be very appealing in a lot of environments. More likely, especially in Western democracies, it's just going to be chaos and fragmentation, irrelevance. And in a world where Western democracies become these kind of chaotic, I'm looking for the right metaphor, things, then of course countries like China and Russia, who do have a purpose, a mission, and a very cruel system that seems to work quite well, will take advantage. So, that's a horrible risk as well. So look, the underlying tension that we see everywhere is kind of the battle between, to put it really crudely, and even I don't take this very seriously, Enlightenment values, a kind of epistemic constitution where you have a democracy where evidence matters, where people respect arguments, where you can win an argument with the evidence. Deliberative democracy, which was never really happening, but at least it was an ideal. And we did have institutions that we trusted. Courts we ultimately trusted. Expertise was trusted. You had all these kind of like offices of national statistics. And when they said something, it was trusted. And really the most important, institution which is trusted as something which gives objective evidence are the ones associated with health. It doesn't matter if you're left, right, pink, yellow. When you go to the doctor, it really doesn't matter. You don't care if your doctor's a Republican or a Democrat. He's a doctor. He's dealing with science and facts. And really kind of the medical profession and the government institutions of public health, always the most trusted. Doctors, nurses, always the most trusted. And have always been above the fray. So on the one hand, you have this kind of like, the vestiges of deliberative democracy and Enlightenment ideals. However, ironically, we say Enlightenment ideals. And on the other hand, there's kind of this politics where nobody can tell truth from fiction, where people feel they live in an information, disinformation, misinformation whirlpool, a tumult. And in that world, all that matters are emotions and your tribe and, identity politics and the politics of identity. But on the other hand, we see what's happening in America, where even the coronavirus started to get politicized, where wearing a mask became a sign of your political allegiance. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. But we even saw there how, the politics of emotion and identity was eating into really the last bastion, the last drawbridge of evidence-based discourse. We'll see who wins. It's a real tug of war. It would be lovely if this was a moment where ultimately society came to its senses and started understanding that we need to have some sort of processes that we trust and some sort of evidence that we trust, or else we die.